who's the third one?
Pete.
Pete Chapman, sorry.
Thank you.
In any others who might be coerced.
Exactly.
Has to be elected. Okay, we'll start with some questions that we prepared. And again, if you have any, if it sparks a question, please feel free to ask it. Rose, how much time does it take to serve on the board?
It takes as much time as you want to put into it. Regular members at large, you can figure out you have to spend some time reviewing the board packets of the upcoming meeting. That can take an hour or two. You can jot down some questions or do some research if you want. On the day of the board meetings, you are in open session or in closed session, then open session. That varies. It can be 2 hours, it can be 3 hours, it can be 4 hours. It depends on how intense the agendas are. You also then are going to spend a couple hours at the committee meeting when you are assigned as a liaison. The other little kink there is if you are a board officer. That adds a little more time. As a board secretary, I have to sign documents, review the weekly windup, review the newsletter, work on the nominating committee, and prepare the appreciation dinner.
And the election.
And the election, yeah, this committee, yes. So the CFO would have other duties. The president has more duties than anybody else. There are rumors that Russ has a bed in one of the back rooms and spends many nights there, but I've never been able to confirm that. The bottom line is you spend as much time as you think is necessary for your position. If you don't want to serve as a board officer, you can decline. It's hardly up to you. So I'd say anywhere between 3 and 6 hours a month, depending on what you want to put into it. The good news is what you put into it, you also get back from it. So that's the Reader's Digest version.
Pete, what goes on in executive session?
Well, I was hoping that it was going to be a poker party, but it didn't quite work out that way. This is a pretty structured meeting that actually ends up, to my surprise, to be fairly informal. The set agenda, and I'll just read it off to you. There's a secretary report, which we approve previous session minutes. There's a management report that Amber will do that includes action items update. There's a compliance, which talks about any problems that we might have in the neighborhood with landscape or property concerns. And really, there's only been a couple of those ongoing that we're dealing with, and not a big deal. Delinquency, which is financial, anyone that's maybe past due in their monthly payments, and I've been amazingly surprised at how clean that is. We're a pretty good neighborhood, guys. Clap all of our backs on that. There's anything that might deal with contracts ongoing with any vendors that we might have some concerns over, or any problems, and frankly, those are so well managed by Amber that I'm not aware of really any issues there that we have to discuss. There's legal issues where we keep up to date with any COVID issues. This year's been kind of active with CC&R potential changes because of the crazy laws that the state has come up with. And of course, annually we'll deal with elections. And again, there's been changes with that. And there's any personnel issues. How do we get rid of Amber? Which is certainly not an issue. I got to tell you all that she does a wonderful, wonderful job, and we're really pleased to have her. But what I want to leave you with is that it's really a chance to be open, and while it's structured, to be informal and talk about what you really think and agree upon. before you go into the open session. So of all, this has been the session that probably I have enjoyed the most.
It basically deals with items that are to remain confidential.
That's right.
So things like salaries, things like just people not paying their dues, property problems, contract problems. Russ,
You skip Mark.
okay, I can do Mort first, except I think he was on the phone. Is he done?
Oh, okay.
I'm done. I'm
Okay.
clear. I'm good.
These are the four.
Okay. Mort, does the board meet to talk about issues between board meetings?
Nope.
Can you elaborate a
No,
little?
we really do not. We keep everything either in executive session or open. Sometimes the board members will get notified of something that we need to know about, such as an event happening at the lodge, somebody falling, hurting themselves. An incident a few weeks ago involved an incident at the lodge. Russ is good about, or the president should be good about notifying the various board members of anything that they should know about. Russ made phone calls to all of us this morning, advising us of the situation with Ed. But have we met and talked about anything? No. Are we going to have a special executive session meeting Friday? Yes. But again, it's all organized in a meeting. Minutes are taken. No behind the back deals, nothing.
Right. In fact, by law, you can't have a quorum, 4 people
Right.
discussing things.
Even careful in my social outings. I have friends in the community, and I do not have more than 3 of us at any one outing.
Questions? Russ, how involved is the board with daily lodge operations, and what's the board's interaction with the general manager and staff?
Excellent, and I'm glad I got that one. First of all, it's really set up, and I would recommend that everybody wanting to run for the board, take a look at all the policies and procedures that we have, because it's all in writing. How do we act? What do we do? And what authority we have. And so policy 18 is very clear and gives the authority to the board president and maybe the vice president, and also maybe the CFO and maybe the secretary to interface with the general manager based on what their task might be at the time. But as the president, yes, I do interface pretty well day in and day out with the general manager. But one of our really key things here in the HOA is that we're not the employer of the staff, okay? We hire a management company who has staff on site. And so we keep that very clear to keep an arm's length and make sure that the legal and labor laws are followed by the management company, and we don't get involved in that part of it. To be honest, it takes some work. It is depends on the manager. They might be involved with a text message. It might be a phone call. It might be an email. We try to handle day-to-day activities as quickly as necessary. And since March 18th of 2020, with the COVID-19 and wanting to be very reactive whenever we needed to be, we set up a ad hoc executive committee of 3 board members, 3 officers, in that it doesn't constitute a quorum for the board. And we have been meeting about weekly for an hour or more and trying to handle anything that needed immediate action rather than that couldn't wait for the next board meeting 30 days away, if you will. That's worked out very well. It's opened up what the president would normally be meeting with the general manager about to also 2 more officers. So we had 3 of us all involved in trying to make those type of decisions. And I found that very helpful. Nancy Ahern started that, and I have carried that on with a charter for that committee on what they are to address. If it's not part of that charter, then we don't address it. But over the years, the interface between the president and the general manager is fairly a day-to-day activity and happens quite a bit.
I'm going to toss another question to you.
Yep.
What's the basic difference between the reserve account and the operating budget?
Okay, and I hope I can get through this. I'll give it my best shot. First of all, our operating account basically has a balance of about $400,000. We keep at least 3 months of expenses in cash so that we could always handle any of the bills. So the operating account pays all the day-to-day bills. We have an online invoice system so that we see the invoice ahead of time. 2 members of the board, the president and the CFO, normally approve an expense, and then it goes into cash management and it's handled all as an online function. All the normal operating expenses are handled that way, and it comes out of our union bank account. You can always look at the website and see our assets. Our balance sheet has approximately $445,000 in operating funds and approximately $1.3 million in reserve fund. The reserve is all based on paying ahead of time for the maintenance and depreciation that is happening on the asset as it goes in. Now, we don't put everything in the reserve, but only things that are basically over $500, maybe cumulative, they're over $500. Say like a light is $100 a piece, but we got 300 of them. Well, they'll be in the reserve so that if we have to replace light fixtures, all of a sudden we can take that out of the reserve account. The big difference is a reserve is funded every month with a contribution directly from operating assets to the reserve, and it's meant to keep building up that for whenever we need the money. As everybody here pays assessments, a major part of your assessment goes into that 14. This year we're using 14. I'm sorry. Right now we're putting in $14,500 from operating into the reserve, and based on whatever we need last year rather, we resurfaced the tennis courts and pickleball courts, $40,000. Okay, that comes out of reserve. We wouldn't want to take that out of an operating account. But when we replace a light bulb or replace a pump at the pool, it depends. If we were replacing a part of the pump, we'll probably take it out of operating. It's $100, $500. But if we're going to replace the whole pump, it's $3,000. We'll take that out of reserve. What we don't do is borrow from operating to reserve or reserve to operating. You'll see that on the balance sheet as well as doing from operating. We don't like to see that. And in the audit, my dear friend Ed would never like to see the word borrow. Okay, so we don't borrow. We fund our reserves and we write the check out of the right account from the start. And because we're online, we get to see everything, and the financials are sent out. We get to review them, we get to make changes, and then we get a new set of them. And that's what you see on the website is an adjusted financials that's been through the finance committee, the CFO, probably by myself and Amber as well. And that's then what gets approved and put onto the website. And by the way, any of the potential candidates, I would offer this based on my experience. If you need any help with financials, I'll be glad to sit down and work with you to understand them thoroughly.
Yes, Russ was a CFO a year ago, so he's very familiar with them.
Well, Marty, I have a couple questions.
Nice to see you, Mark.
Hey, I liked your column today, and it caught me. If you use the facilities, maybe it's time that you go to work and help. And anyway, my first question is, do you on the board tend to get contacted by members of the public that want something, and what do you do with those sorts of contacts?
I never had anybody contact me. I believe Other board members have sometimes had people contacted, but depends on how involved they are and how many people they know in the community.
Hmm.
Not that many people know me. I was surprised I got elected, to tell you the truth. But they need a candidate, so I figured, okay, I'll stand up. And I got elected.
Marta, are you talking about outsiders or residents?
Residents.
Okay.
It
And
It
depends.
it happens once in a while, but it's not really big. And I'll offer, Paul Kreitz told me that when he became president, he put a big notebook by the telephone and expected he had to record all the calls that came in every day. And he wound up not having to write much down.
Okay.
Guys,
My second
I-
question is,
Well,
what
let
sort
me
of,
add, let me add to that, because it does come up occasionally as you're walking through the neighborhood. You'll have folks that will come up and ask questions or make comments or have a complaint.
Mhm.
And what I had to learn was you have to be a bit careful not to give an independent opinion, but rather as a member of the board, you kind of have to maybe reserve your answer to what the board might want to address in the future or what the board has already addressed. With COVID, there's been a whole lot of questions. Gee, if I've got vaccinations, can I use the gym? That kind of thing. And it's natural for folks in the neighborhood to want to ask those kind of questions. But I think as a board member, I have found that I have to kind of be a little careful as to what my answer might be to make sure that it's not an independent answer, but it's really more what the board is espousing. Russ, fair to answer it that way?
Absolutely. And I think
Yes.
it's really key that they expect, because when you are a board member, if you say anything, it is the board speaking. So we are very cautious about how we address it, and we'd rather have it in writing, and we'd rather have it come from the board, not from an individual. So yeah, I think Pete, you answered that extremely well.
My second question is, when I was working, I carried professional insurance for various reasons. What sort of legal protection do you have when you're serving on the board?
Russ, is that something you can answer?
Yeah, we do have director's insurance, we have liability insurance, we have bonds, bond insurance. We are very well protected. It is a really excellent question. There is always some risk, and that is it's if you are negligent. But as long as you follow what I propose is that we have a very strict set of policies and procedures. Davis Sterling, all of our governing documents, if it's documented, et cetera, we're pretty well protected, and I don't ever feel that I'm at risk.
Okay, thank you.
Good.
Anything else? Mark, anything else?
No, not right now.
Bill, what do you like most about being on the board?
When I ran for the board, I made myself a vow that after a 17-year break from being on the board, I would, and by the way, when I was on the board 17 years ago, Ed was the chairman of the finance committee. But I thought I'm going to learn once and for all about what the reserve is all about. I'm perfectly satisfied that everything we've heard is perfectly true. What goes on, what kind of people are running it, what does the staff do? So in the first couple of months, I spent 3 times as long reading all the information we got. I like that. What I dislike is being on the golf course, ready to swing, and someone comes up and says, "Hey, Bill, if we're not open all the time, how come we're paying so much money? Why don't you refund money to us?" Or, asking personnel questions. Well, now that Casey left, what do we do next? Or, hey, what's Russ like to work with? Or on and on. That I don't like. I do like the camaraderie of being with the board and the staff and the landscape committee and the committee chair people and et cetera. On the whole, I'm pleased that I decided to run.
Bill, I've seen you play. Somebody interrupted the swing will not affect your results.
I mean, what? I'm sorry.
I've seen you play. Having somebody interrupt your swing will not affect your results.
Have you ever heard about the pot calling the kettle black?
Diana, you're probably the one who's been most affected by this. How has the pandemic changed being a board member?
Well, due to COVID-19, last March, as you all know, the Board of Directors made the decision to close the lodge for the safety of our residents. As Russ mentioned already, an executive ad hoc committee was formed to provide business continuity and rapid response decision-making to facilitate the day-to-day operations of our association. The Lodge Reopening Committee was also formed to develop a set of recommendations to safely reopen the lodge facility in stages or by venue in accordance with federal, state, and Riverside County health guidelines. Perhaps the biggest change for the board members was that in-person meetings were canceled and we began holding all of our meetings via Zoom. Since the pandemic began, we have increased the cleaning, disinfecting, and wiping down of common areas and common area surfaces at the lodge, installed hand sanitizer dispensers or wipes in common areas for residents' use, and have shared COVID-19 updates through mass emails and the weekly windup. Good communication has been key in maintaining the safety of our residents. We're still dealing with these issues. The good news is the positivity rate and the death rate in Riverside County are on the decline. And let's all hope that it continues that way. But it has been a lot of extra duties to deal with, and everyone has come together, everyone has helped. We have a great lodge reopening committee. Everyone has spent an enormous amount of time to get us through this novel pandemic. I mean, we've never been through anything like this before, and we'll be prepared in the future.
Hopefully we
That's it.
don't
Thank
need
you.
it.
I just would like to jump in, if I may, and just give a shout out to some of those people in the community that stepped up and have served now for just about a year on the Lodge Reopening Committee. It's been a tremendous, tremendous service, and those people are to be commended.
Yes,
Yes, I would
definitely.
agree. Because I know in the beginning you had to write all kinds of rules and regulations and review all kinds of information before you did it. So there was a lot of
Correct.
extra.
Came up with many, many documents. And they're all on the website, so you can all see them there. But
There are
we-
many
we-
hours involved in that. Thank you.
yeah,
very
many
much.
hours. But we wanted to keep everyone safe and try to reopen what we could in a safe manner. And I think we've done a great job, everyone.
Well,
Let's,
hopefully with the vaccines coming,
let's be clear though, because I think it's easy to get confused about it. This is not a board function. This is independent. Now there's 3 of us on the LRC committee who are board members, but that's not a criteria. So those of you that are thinking about being on the board may or may not choose to be a part of the LRC as it goes forward. I don't know, Diana, whether.
Well, the LRC makes
Yeah.
recommendations to the board. The board actually makes the decisions.
There you go.
Yeah.
So 2 different processes. By running for the board doesn't mean that you necessarily will
Correct.
be on the LRC committee.
But that was a really great thing that the board did, forming that committee, because everyone has done an outstanding job. Amber's helped us a lot, and now Christina is helping us. And we've made a lot of progress, I think.
Yeah, and as soon as you did, they changed the rules again.
Everything's constantly changing, as you know.
yeah, so go back to plan B because plan C is now moot. So back to plan B. So, Rose, have you ever missed a board meeting?
Once or twice when I was deathly ill, like with a mosquito bite or something, but no big deal. I mean, life happens. Sometimes you just have to say, I have something else come up that I have to deal with.
And as you consider your applying or running for the board, you are expected to participate in the meetings, but as Rose just said, life happens. You know, people get sick, people take vacations. You know when the board meetings are. Hopefully you can schedule your vacation around it, but sometimes there's a cruise you want to take and you can't determine when the boat leaves.
Mhm.
So you have to go then.
I found the
It's understood.
I
But
found the
when
most-
you do run, we expect you to try to be as committed as you can.
I found the most difficult part was convincing my husband of that.
Has the board set the schedule for dates, times of boot camp yet?
No,
Okay.
normally we would have it on the Friday after the election.
I know last year, I think you broke it up into two
Yes,
sessions.
yes.
And because I know I was kind of blindsided by that because they said, well, tomorrow or 2 days from now, we have this thing and surprise. And I didn't know it was coming. So I wanted to make sure all the candidates knew that there is a boot camp set up. And hopefully, once they do set up the dates, the candidates will be informed as to when they are so they can plan their schedules around it.
It
Last year, they broke it up into two, I think it was 4-hour sessions on 2 different days because there was a lot of information coming fast and loose at us.
It kind of depends on who's putting it on. It's often been our attorneys. So it depends on when they're available as well.
Yeah.
So
Any more questions from the pool of possible candidates?
I think all of them are candidates, aren't you? Shake your head. Yes, yes.
Say yes. Say yes. Remember, we need 4.
We need 4.
Would any of the board members like to make a final statement? Bill?
One thing that being a board member, and I've been a board member in other places, spent 14 years on a school board. If the board votes 5-2 to put in gumball machines, and you don't want gumball machines, well, now you do want gumball machines as a board member. Personally, you may not, but once the board votes 4-3, 5-2, 6-1, that is now board policy. And you don't run around saying, gee, I hate those gumball machines, but they just never listen to me. You are part of a team. And once the team makes its decision, you can argue about it all you want before the decision, in executive session and every time. Once it's made, it's policy, and that's the end of it as far as your opinion being different from the majority.
Here, well said.
Pete, do you have a final statement?
Yeah, I do. One of the things that I learned and was pleased about was this has been such a well-run HOA and board over the years that pretty much everything operates by rote. And that's not to say it's not important or that some things come up, but basically we understand with some common sense, it seems to me, what the answer and steps necessary are going to be. So it's really those of you that are interested, it's a desire to continue to make this a great neighborhood. And that's why we're all living here. It's not something that changes a great deal, and you really need to reach out and stretch your mind around this thing. You're following some really good and well-run practices, and it's our job to just keep the boat running down the stream the way it should be.
Anybody else?
Yes. I think one thing that you really have to keep at the forefront of your mind is civility. And that if you disagree with someone, you're disagreeing about something that is important to the community, but is not life and death, and you don't carry forward a dislike for the person who disagreed with you. Once you've taken your vote, as Bill said, you've taken your vote, and you move on as friends.
I think that's, it sums it up into another way too, and that is, it's nothing personal, okay? This is just business. It's a business. We have to run it like a business. You have to make decisions using the good business judgment rule. And if you do that, you're pretty well safe. But as I said before, we have a lot of policies and procedures that have come before us, and it's all put in writing so that it's not a reinvent the wheel every month. It certainly isn't. And obviously, Mark brought it up quite clearly. We don't talk between meetings. I might send out a broadcast email of information, but in that email, it says, do not discuss. Okay, because that is, we do not discuss on email. We do not discuss in the parking lot. We discuss it at the board meeting. But why you might notice that we can make a decision pretty clearly and pretty quickly is that every board member is given all of the information you need on Friday before the meeting. So you might get in your email, on your iPad, a pack of papers, no longer paper, but a pack of papers, 100 to 200 pages. It's every bit of information that you need to make a decision. And if it's not there, that's the time to ask the question, hey, I don't understand this. What do I need to understand it? And Amber will help us get that answer before we sit down and meet on Wednesday at 1 o'clock or Wednesday at 6 o'clock. And so that's part of it. You do have the information. And on our iPad, we no longer get this 6-inch thick binder of 3-ring binder. We get an iPad, and everything from the beginning of us going online with it is on that iPad. So you have all the minutes, you have all the financials, you have all the contracts, we have training, et cetera. In fact, we didn't mention that, but Marty mentioned it, but we do encourage you to learn. I think it's really important that when you start the board, you know that you don't know everything. And when you lead the board, at least you learn something, but you still don't know everything. So it's a good learning experience. I think it's, we should all take care of. And we've tried this year with being on Zoom. I don't know how many hours of Zoom webinars we've taken as board members. Diana is probably leading the pack. I know I've been on it. Marta's done it. We all are on there, legal, reserves, budgets. Everybody had a 1-hour seminar about something, and we took advantage of it. Most of it was at no cost. So, you know, to see 150 attorneys on there that'll answer your questions for free, Diana got some answers for free that we were needed. So it was worth our time. That's all I could say.
Two comments. Number one, I think we all probably are listening and doing this because we feel, probably as I do, a sense to give back. When I moved to the community 8 years ago, within 6 months, I decided I need to give back. I joined the facilities committee and served on that, later the social committee and the nominating committee, and finally on the board. So it's just a sense of community and giving back. Number two, expect surprises. A year ago, COVID hit. Who would have ever imagined? A little over a year ago at the same time, we hired a new manager. A year later, she left. We brought up Amber. Surprises happen, just like life. Be ready for surprises because they will occur.
Some of those surprises were nicer than others, Amber.
Yeah, 30 days in, it's been fun.
And more surprises.
Yes.
So,
Barry had asked me a question last weekend, and I answered him on email, but I thought I'd go ahead and brought it up to everybody. And that was, why do we have an election of officers right after the election by the membership? And that's been the process for many years. It's optional, but once we elect you as members of the committee, or excuse me, the membership who are owners and voters, you elect the board. You elect 7 board members, let's say, and this year we need to elect 4. You elect 4 board members, but you don't elect the officers. The board elects the officers. And we do normally handle that right after the meeting. It must be done in open session. And so we do that because immediately the board president needs to sign contracts. The board president and the board CFO need to sign checks, even though now they are not wet signatures, they're electronic signatures. We have a pile of cards to sign. And you have to have all the officers sign the bank cards for all of these accounts that we have. It also needs the past board president meeting with the new board president to say, hey, this is what's left over, and here's what you got to work with tomorrow. So there is a reason, but Barry's correct. You don't have to do it right away, but we've used that and it's the norm. Okay. Barry, did that help with the answer? I didn't note if there's anything else I needed to help you with.
No, that answered the question, and I understand it. To a certain extent, I think there's value in a board meeting and knowing each other before they elect their officers. I understand why it happens the way it does, and perhaps there's a creative way to give the board a chance to come together before they pick their leaders, but it's just sort of looking as an outsider at the process. And it's not a question that came up to me this year because I was considered
sure.
running for the board. It's something that I've noticed over a number of years.
Good. Okay.
It sounds like the fact that it has to be open session pushes it to an immediate decision.
Yeah. I think in 2008, when I was first elected, we had 6 new board members and 1 retaining member. That was a challenge, okay? All 6 of us were brand new. But at that time, we went into the conference room. Ed De Silva was elected with us, and he had a bottle of wine. And after about 15 minutes, we decided who was what. And we went back in the room and said, hey, we made a decision, here it is. But that was, now it's not legal, okay? So we do have to do it in open session, and that is the reason to tie it in, and it's announced as part of the agenda. And again, open meeting, you have to announce the agenda 4 days in advance. So a lot of these things, your hands are tied, just how much you can do and how fast you can do. I think that's the one thing you will learn, is that in business, you can make a decision and make it happen today. Not here. It takes time and it takes a lot of work before things happen. It just doesn't happen overnight.
Are there any laws about candidates talking to each other prior to the election?
Absolutely not. I mean, if you were in the days before COVID, I'd say you should have a cocktail party and talk to each other.
And
not?
you could talk to a board member too.
Absolutely, yes. We should always
So you
offer
can get to
that.
know them in advance.
All board members should be open to address any question you have, meet with you, spend time, help you understand our minutes, our financials, et cetera. All of the board members should be available to you, anything that you need.
I'd like to add something also. When I was elected 2 years ago, we went for our orientation meeting and there was really nothing in writing. It's kind of like, okay, well, now what do I do? I don't know anything. I've never been on the board before. So we came up with a new board member orientation manual, and it's pretty complete to give you a background of what each officer is responsible for, you know, what the management company does, you know, your vendors, the financials, a little brief introduction to understanding the financials. And I think it's really been helpful. We used that with the last orientation meeting. It made it a lot smoother, and you kind of knew, going in, what everything was. So it was very helpful. So you would have that. Does that make sense?
Does anyone else have any comments they'd like to make or questions they want to ask?
I think we can let Amber give a sales pitch as to where you come to get your applications.
That's right.
There's a couple, there's a couple ways you can get them. You can go on the website. You can come pick one up at the lodge, although we prefer them to be electronic. So they can all look the same when we post them. Or you can have me email you one as well, or the front desk. So there's many different options that you can have, and they've been posted in the weekly windup as well. Pretty much every Friday for the last, I don't know, few Fridays. So, yeah,
I would recommend that you type them and not handwrite them.
correct. That's, yeah. The one online is fillable.
Yes.
And
So-
that way, if somebody wants to type them for you, so they all appear the same, nobody is going to type something incorrectly for you. You've typed it yourself.
Right, yeah, if you handwrite them, we will not retype them. So we prefer that they are typed so they all look, when we post them, they all look right.
And so the community can read what you have to say.
Yes.
Could you remind us,
If you do handwriting, your handwriting, we may not be able to read
could you remind us when the applications are due?
by the
March
10th at 5
5
p.m.
PM.
If anybody needs help typing it, I'd be glad to do that. I've done it for others.
And I encourage all of you to consider running for the board, and please do so. I think you would all be excellent candidates and good board members. The community has had a history of having a very effective board, and I think you would all continue that history. And we've got a great, very strong reserve fund. People pay their bills. The community looks terrific. Property values are high. So I encourage you all to run.
Yes.
It's
They run in our direction, not in the other direction.
run for the board, not away.
You have amazing staff to work with. We're all, we love
You
working
do?
here. Yes.
Well, if no one else has any questions, I'm going to call the meeting to an end. Thank you
Thank
all for
you.
participating.
Yes,
Thank
If
you,
you
Marty,
have
very
any
much.
questions in the future, contact any of the nominating committee members, as Neil King, Jack Vaughn, and myself, or any current member of the board. We will all be happy to answer any questions that you may have.
And help yourself to wine and snacks on the way out.
Yes, normally we would
Yeah,
have wine and
thank you.
snacks, but
That
COVID.
is something we've been missing, that's for sure.
I
We
bet.
need better cookies.
The virtual doesn't cut it.
No, it doesn't. Not the same.
Thank
Thank you.
that all.
Thank you.
Good night.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you, everybody.
Good night.
Thank you.
Hasta luego.